meeting of the State of Rhode Island Coastal Resources Management Council to order. Today is Tuesday, April 9, 2024. I would ask that the record reflect the council members that are present, as well as CRMC staff that is here as well. First matter on the agenda would be approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, March 12, 2024. I know there was an email correction made, adding Mr. Flynn is present, correct? So with that, are there any other changes being offered, or can we have a motion to accept the minutes as prepared?
So moved.
Motion made, is there a second? Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? The motion carries. Subcommittee reports.
One subcommittee report tonight, Mr. Chair. The Planning and Procedure Subcommittee met earlier tonight to ask the committee to go to rulemaking again on the administrative fines. As you all remember, a month or two ago, we had the administrative fines up here for approval, but the council had some discussions among itself and asked staff to revisit some of the issues they have. They brought those revisions to P&P, and with some of the changes that were made at the P&P subcommittee meeting tonight, the subcommittee allowed us to begin rulemaking again. So we'll put those out for advertisement, have a public hearing within the next 30 to 45 days.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Willis? Staff reports.
One staff report, Mr. Chair, and just you might have all seen the announcement today that the governor, along with DEM, CRMC, and the Infrastructure Bank, announced about $4 million in grants for resilience projects that would protect coastal habitat and shoreline access on public lands. The DEM, CRMC, and the Infrastructure Bank have joined together after legislation that was passed last session on the Oscar program allowed funds to be competed for, if you will, that protects coastal habitat and shoreline access on public lands. So that announcement was made today, and we hope to have some very fine applications submitted to us in that regard. And I hope to report on that in a couple of months on how successful it was. But that's my report tonight.
Any questions of Director Willis on that? Thank you. Our first matter on the agenda will be administrative application that will be before the council for review and action. First one is bearing number 2023-12-058. Betty GRUSKAY, trustee et al. It's an application to construct a new single-family dwelling serviced by denitrifying, OWTS, public water, pervious driveway, and stormwater management, BMP, and to establish a vegetated buffer zone. Variance required to the buffer/setback distances. Project location is Brant Road South, South Kingstown, Rhode Island, Plat 90-4, lot 130. Is the applicant present this evening? And if so, you may come forward here.
Right here.
That's fine, right there. And before we hear from you, we'll have our staff give a presentation. I believe Amy has this.
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair. As noted, this application is for a single-family dwelling in the town of South Kingstown, located in the Twin Peninsula neighborhood on Green Hill Pond, type 2 water body. The application has a previous PD from 2017 for a previous owner, reviewing the potential to build a single-family dwelling. At that time, it was noted that the Red Book buffer zone requirement was 75 feet and a 100-foot setback, and that according to the Salt Pond Special Area Management Plan, a minimum 25-foot buffer zone is required for lands developed beyond carrying capacity. Current submission, as I noted, is a different owner. It is a smaller dwelling than what was reviewed under the 2017 PD. It had initially come in with that 25-foot minimum buffer zone. Staff recommended the applicants to do some revisions to get to at least a 50% variance of the Red Book buffer zone in order for the application to be reviewed administratively. The applicants went back to the drawing board and came up with revisions. They did increase the buffer zone, and they were able to meet 50% over a portion of the property, but not across the entire thing. So because a portion of the buffer zone is less than the 50%, it is here before the council, as applications requesting greater than 50% variance must be decided by the council. Reviewing staff feels that the applicants have minimized to the greatest extent practicable and that they meet the variance criteria. They recommend approval with a deed restriction to limit further development on the property as recommended in the 2017 preliminary determination.
Thank you. Any questions of Amy from the council? Can the parties before the council at the table identify yourselves, please?
Jack McGreen for the applicant.
And then Jean-Luc Bellefleur, which we are the buyer.
And Elizabeth Aponte, also the buyer.
Could you two please raise your right hand?
Yes.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
I do.
Could you please spell your names for the record?
So JEAN-LUC, last name BELLEFLEUR.
And Elizabeth ELIZABETH, Aponte, A as an apple, PONTE.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicants have read the staff report and they agree with the stipulations recommended by the staff. They're here to answer any questions. If you have any questions for them in connection with their construction of the two-bedroom, single-family dwelling on the premises.
Mr. Flynn.
Just have one question, Mr. Green, how are you? Long time no see.
I know,
Um,
long time,
long time, I know.
84,
Oh, no.
85.
No, I left Cranston in 2005, so it's not that long. My only question is, has this lot ever been associated with any of the other abutting lots? In other words, is it a recently created lot?
No, there's no
grandfathered
merger
lot?
provision. Yes, it's just
Legal
recently.
non-conforming lot?
Yes.
That's all I wanted to.
I have a question for the staff, and we'll look at that for you. So just regarding one of the stipulations with, it looked to me like this is the structure can never get bigger. Is that correct?
Correct. That's what the recommended deed restriction would do. It would prohibit any future development of the property.
Does that include if they wanted a deck, or maybe does the plan include a deck at this time? And I know decks are tricky because people try to make rooms out of them later.
It would preclude a deck. So if there is not one now,
There is one in the current design, like
There
lower
is,
level,
yeah.
but no, one that's designed to allow for rain to come through.
yes, there is a deck on the plan now.
So that, and you're okay with that?
Of course, yes.
Okay.
Amy, does that include vertical expansion too, or just footprint?
I think we're maxed at the height that is.
Like for the town, yeah, we went as high as we could go for it.
Typically, for a deed restriction that says no further development, it means no further development, but yeah, height is typically a town thing.
Yeah, I just, if we're at the discussion period, I hope we are.
I have questions before that.
Yep.
Yes.
I have questions before
Okay.
that. I have a couple of questions. On the minimum house footprint relative to the deed restriction, it's 20, the pilings are 20 feet tall. So for this young couple, that seems perfectly delightful, but then when they do sell and we have a deed restriction on the footprint, is that going to also preclude any kind of elevator that may be wanted or some kind of a ramp for people that aren't keen on taking those stairs up to 20 feet up on the pilings because they're not going to stay there forever?
I think we would have to write the deed restriction in such a way that perhaps handicapped accessibility could be permitted, but other expansion would not.
Right, when we've had that situation, we've looked at the footprint of the structure and incorporated that type of accessibility within the footprint of the structure as
Within the
as
footprint?
best as possible. Yep,
Okay, so
That-
like,
that's-
not
that's-
like an exterior elevator like they have down south,
not
on
necessarily.
elevated houses, but something within
We
the
do-
structure?
We would try to do that, yes.
Okay, and so the deed restriction considers future alterations for older individuals who are not going to take the stairs up that 20 feet.
Well, I think this comment is one that Amy was trying to address, and we should make sure that the stipulation incorporates this intent.
Okay, and then, did you want to, were you saying something?
May I just add something? As it stands now, no further development means just that. So if there was to be a deed restriction that said just no further development, that would include the two instances that you have. There would need to be additional language on that. But I would qualify that to say, and I know Mr. McGreen did the zoning on this. I'm assuming you're at the max because you got a variance for this.
Correct.
In order to get a ramp or anything on the exterior, that would require further zoning approval, which I'm not so sure they're gonna get in this instance, given the fact that it's a substandard original lot record.
Yeah, I've seen what happens though when someone comes in later and wants handicap accessibility. And there's effort to provide that. So if in fact it's contemplated that it's gonna be within this footprint for all the reasons you've stated, it probably is, it isn't a bad idea to state that. And then I had another follow-up question.
Could I ask a question about that? Because even if that was the case, it would still have to go back to the town.
That's correct, yes.
But this doesn't mean it's not gonna get approved.
No, but our saying that we want to accommodate, future handicap accessibility doesn't mean that the town would necessarily grant it.
That's correct, Mr. Flynn. That was my point.
Okay.
Zoning approval would be needed here. Maybe granted, maybe not.
Right.
I mean, obviously, the restrictive covenant, it's always, no further development without town or CRMC approval. That's really what the covenant would say, correct? Because obviously you can always go in and ask for further relief if you think you need it, and you could say no. Like anything, you can't prevent somebody from coming back to the board and saying, listen, we would like to put in a ramp. But we would have to ask. We always have to ask. You can't do anything without asking.
Well, actually, that's not not my view at all. I think if it's a strict no further development, then what Ms. Robinson Hall is saying is correct. That's why I think the point is that it has to be tailored for matters of that nature.
Right.
Yeah, exactly, right.
Yeah, I respectfully, I appreciate her opinion and I'll jump on that, but I think it's always subject to somebody coming in and asking. If you say no further development, that means without the prior approval of CRMC in the town. It always
What's the
means that.
point of a deed restriction then?
Yeah, that's why.
Right, you have to go in and get an
CRMC.
amendment. You can go in and ask for an amendment to the deed restriction. You can always ask. That's all I'm saying. I mean, you can't prevent somebody. I see it all the time when people say no further development, no further subdivision of a lot. Just because you say no further subdivision of a lot, doesn't mean you can't go into the town and say, listen, under these circumstances, we think we should get it.
Yeah, actually, I agree with Ms. Robinson Hall on this thing. That's why it's a deed restriction.
And an elevator example, that wouldn't be expanding the footprint. You're just talking about perhaps a ramp going into the home.
Depends on where the elevator is.
If it's within the structure, not going outside the footprint.
If it helps at all, we're planning on staying. in Plainview.
I know.
And it would never be a ramp outside. I would go after an
Yeah, we're
elevator.
gonna get old.
But it's the ramp, really, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It would be increasing the footprint of the art
I've
space.
seen all the things. So I have two more follow-up questions. One is, the coastal hazard analysis, that was done relative to severe damage to the site from storm surge, given that most of it's a wetland. That analysis, did it take into effect the loss of that area of wetland, such as it is in light of this confines of the lot? Did that analysis take into effect impact to adjacent properties relative to deflecting that storm surge or causing any additional flooding to the abutters?
the Siri app, which is what estimates your damage, is done on a case-by-case basis, a property-by-property basis. And it is considering the storm surge and the flooding.
So it doesn't consider the impact of the construction on this lot to how that storm surge may then be deflected onto adjacent lots?
No, it's strictly for a homeowner to understand that their home has the potential to be damaged by storms.
Was there any analysis on what the development of this lot would do relative to sea level rise and storm surge for butters?
There never is. There is only the analysis under the coastal hazards worksheet for that particular dwelling elevation in relation to sea level rise and storm surge. And they actually meet the storm tools design elevation, suggested elevation. They exceed it.
Yeah, I saw that for
Yeah.
elevation. So no cumulative impact on impacts. Just
Not under the
Flooding.
CHA, no.
anything under our regulations ask to look at cumulative impact relative to flooding?
Not at this point.
And then my last question is, the additional variable 3-foot to 20-foot buffer zone that, is part of this plan to be maintained. How is that guaranteed to be maintained in perpetuity? It's, numbers 2 and 3 on the report refers to retaining a variable.
2 and 3 in the staff comments section.
Hold on, I'm finding your section.
Page 3.
Yeah, in the staff comment section.
Yes, on the staff comment.
So,
Number 2, relative to section 1111.
right, and
Applicant has provided.
it's worded a little odd. So the applicant had initially come in with a 25-foot buffer across the entire property. And staff requested that they come in, or they go back to revise it and increase the buffer. They were able to add between 3 and 20 feet of additional buffer.
So how is that enforced in perpetuity?
We require
It's such
permanent,
a minimum buffer.
it's not a minimum buffer.
Well, then this is a variance from 75 to 25, so it is a minimum buffer. It's not 75.
Correct. It is a variant buffer.
Yes.
Every buffer zone that we issue is required to be marked by permanent markers and is required to be remaining in a permanent vegetated state. There's stipulations within our standard ascent to that. And typically we require the permanent markers to be put in first.
So are permanent markers required here?
They will be as part of standard ascent stipulations.
That's
Yes.
not noted here. Is that
Standard.
standard? Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Katie, anything else?
No, thank you very much.
Mr. Gomez,
Since we just went down that path, what's the deal with outside auxiliary structures? And I'm thinking like a dog kennel or a small shed for tools and things. Are they allowable or not allowable? They'd have to be in the footprint, not in.
It's my understanding of the way the deed restrictions that we have done in the past is this plan is it
Okay, I got it.
as far as structures, yeah.
No, the tool shed wouldn't be allowed. That'd be considered
Correct.
additional development.
Yeah, but maybe a dog kennel.
No,
No.
out.
Oh, yeah, my bottom line is I went through this quite a bit and, I had a lot of problems with it and Catherine's gone to some of those. But I blew up the picture of the neighborhood. And then I looked at a lot of similar places, many with much less footage, yardage of square feet type thing and things. So that kind of, along with your stipulations and stuff, that kind of said, well, that's fine because it fits in with the neighborhood very well, I think. So I don't know if that plays or not, but you're not putting a little shack in the middle of mansion. You're putting, it's kind of fits the neighborhood well, I think.
Yeah, fitting the neighborhood is not
Yeah, I understand,
what we
but it
do-
made me feel better.
What we do consider is, it's a pre-existing lot of record, it's
Yes.
a non-conforming lot. They physically cannot meet a 75-foot buffer zone because
Yeah.
it's out into the street.
Yeah.
So then we look at, are you doing the minimum necessary? And it's not a substantial footprint of a home. It really is a home, a driveway, and a septic system.
And
So-
you did all the pervious, the driveway and stuff.
Correct, the driveway will be pervious and stormwater management for the roof is provided.
Yeah.
And that's about all that fits. The rest is buffer zone.
I understand, you've got a very tight, document here, and, like I said, the winning thing for me was just, it fit to the neighborhood, you did the best to fit it on the lot, there was a lot of record, and, I had originally thought that I was pretty much against it, but, with the discussion, it seems like you've done as much as you can to allow a house and, to prevent trouble in the future. So, end of my soliloquy or whatever it was.
Any further questions from the council?
I just have one last question
Yeah.
about the restriction to no further building, but that wouldn't include, I noticed that the structures on either side had docks. It would still be allowed to be considered per dock.
Yes, the deed restriction would allow for a request for a dock. It would allow for a request for some buffer zone management. Neither of those are on lot development. They're associated with.
What's wrong?
I just have one last question, just to clarify, just for my own thinking, and maybe for the record, on there being no evaluation of cumulative impacts from this development. So under the SAMP for salt ponds, in the policy section that talks about the role of CRMC to evaluate cumulative impacts, I know that section's really about nitrification of the salt ponds and thinking about stormwater runoff and pervious surface areas. There has been a stormwater management plan here, but it also, I would imagine, speaks to the issue of climate changes, relative to flooding and surge and water. So are those policies not applicable to this application? Is that why there's no review of cumulative impacts for this project?
The salt pond SAMP does not have any sections related to climate change as yet. The red book does.
The cumulative impacts, though, is what I'm asking about.
Correct, but within the salt pond, it does not call out sea level rise or climate change impacts. So it's referring to itself and by extension referring to the red book, which it is a sub chapter of.
Well, it's referring to stormwater runoff in
Right.
impervious surface areas. Storms are a function of climate. So it doesn't have to say, I don't think it has to say climate change for it to count.
Correct, and the requirement is they have to contain the roof runoff and any other impervious surfaces, and they meet that. And the salt pond SAMP requirement regarding buffer zones, which is to also help with stormwater runoff and flooding and sea level rise, is to have at least a 25-foot buffer, which they do. They actually exceed that.
So, but my question is, this policy regarding minimizing cumulative impacts, does it apply to this project? When you said that you don't look at cumulative impacts, I'm just confused. I just would like some clarification.
Can I jump in? It does, and I think you've already touched on it, where the salt pond SAMP plan does look at cumulative impacts from a water quality perspective, and you've already enumerated them. Amy brought in the buffers. So the stormwater and the buffers were the mechanism in the policy of the program development at that time to address cumulative impacts. Now we've learned a lot about climate change impacts relative to storms, erosion, et cetera. And the coastal hazard analysis tries to take that into account, but on a lot by lot basis. It doesn't look at it cumulatively. So to answer your question is that no, I don't think it's holistically looked at cumulative impacts from a climate perspective on this lot. But the program does look at cumulative impacts, I would say, absent climate change issues.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Anything the applicant would like to add?
That completes our presentation.
Anything from our attorneys?
No,
Okay. Is the council in a position to make a motion on the application? Mr. Gagnon,
I would move approval of the application with the standard stipulations, the stipulation for no further development that would include an allowance for handicap access if needed. Or I would at least have to come back to the council for approval for handicap access. And I think that was the only standard, that was the only special condition.
you're gonna do the variance standards.
Yeah.
I think you have to have a statement about the variance standards because it's a variance.
That I move approval that it meets the variance standards.
motion's been made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Flynn. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll poll the council. Mr. Flynn,
Aye.
Mr. Izzy,
Aye.
Mr. Gomez,
Aye.
Ms. Hall,
Aye.
Mr. Gagnon,
Aye.
Ms. Reynolds.
Aye.
I too, Raymond Coyer, vote aye. The application has been approved unanimously. Congratulations. Good luck.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
First and last, parents before CRMC.
I think I see a phone or something on the floor, so someone doesn't forget, if that's what it is.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Next matter on our agenda is public hearing on proposed rulemaking. Title of the rule is Management Procedures 650-RICR-10-00-1. Rulemaking Authority in the Rhode Island General Laws, Chapter 46-23. In sequence.
No,
Okay. Director Willis, anything before we go to Bruce on it or go straight to Bruce? You're up, Bruce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is the required public hearing for proposed rulemaking in two sections of the management procedures. Sections 1.1.4.6A and 1.5.12. Proposed rulemaking to section 1.4.6A would eliminate the 3-day beach vehicle passes in the beach vehicle program. The annual beach vehicle permit program would remain unchanged. And proposed rulemaking to section 1.5.12 would eliminate the 4th extension request, which requires council approval. The 3 administrative extension requests would remain. And again, this is a public hearing to provide the public the opportunity to provide any in-person comments if they want to. No formal council action is required tonight.
Okay. Any questions of Bruce from the council? Mr. Flynn?
What's the reason for eliminating this 3-day pass?
Well, there's 2 reasons. The first reason is we issue 2,000 beach vehicle permits a year. Of the 2,000, less than 50 are 3-day passes.
Okay.
And we've seen a decline in the number of beach vehicle of 3-day passes over the last 3 to 5 years. And also it was derived from some comments that we've heard from municipal police forces that people tend to keep driving the beach beyond the 3-day limit, and it's been kind of an issue on that end as well.
So those people would presumably just get a season pass.
Right, so instead of getting a 3-day pass, you just get an annual pass. So it's not prohibiting anyone from driving on the beach that would already be able to. It's just instead of a 3-day, you buy an annual.
Is there any other pass besides the annual pass?
No, it would just be
Just the annual.
in-state annual or out-of-state annual.
Just was curious.
Further questions?
A follow up Kevin's question, with a similar question.
Why are we getting rid of the fourth extension?
The fourth extension requires council approval, and I think we've noticed over the years that it tends to fill up a lot of agendas with that request, and staff can still administratively approve pre-extension requests. Permits are expire 3 years, and each extension request is another year. So it's still, 6 years. This would just eliminate the fourth and final 1-year request.
And if I can go into more detail, it just seemed that the fourth extension was more than enough time to be basically 7 years. So a 6-year permit is really what it came down to. The ones that did come up here, we could handle administratively for the reasons that are being proposed. And it just didn't feel like a good use of the council's time when we can handle it administratively. It saved literally weeks in handling it administratively. And again, 6 years is, in our opinion, plenty of time.
What is with the DEM permits go as far as 6 years too? It's usually 4 years plus a 2-year, 1 2-year extension.
Okay. I think motion to close public hearing. Entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So
Motion made and seconded. I'll do a roll on it just to be consistent. Mr. Flynn?
Aye.
Mr. Izzy?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Ms. Wall? Mr. Gagnon?
Aye.
Ms. Reynolds?
Aye.
I too, Ray McCoy, vote aye to close the public hearing on the proposed rulemaking. I don't think there's anything else to come before the council. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce.